Hello there, and welcome to this webinar brought to you by Field Service News and in partnership with IFS. My name is Kris Oldland, I'm the Editor-in-Chief of Field Service News and I'm hosting the webinar today. Just a bit of a brief introduction. I think as we approach this time of year, we're all sure to see a raft of features and articles and news pieces that will be looking forward to some of the emerging technology that we should all be turning our attention to across 2016. Indeed, our own research has shown a big appetite for both cloud computing and particularly the Internet of Things recently. And I must admit myself, I'm a big fan of some of the exciting technologies appearing, such as artificial intelligence, augmented reality and 3D printing, and the impact these technologies could have on field service operations. However, there is a very strong argument that unless we have a bedrock of fundamental field service technology that allows us to achieve that well-drilled field service mantra of getting the right engineer to the right place at the right time with the right parts, then we may well struggle to see some of the true benefits of any of the emerging techs that we choose to implement. And this is very much the thinking behind today's presentation. I'm very pleased to be joined today by Daryl Dudey, a scheduling expert for IFS, and I'll be handing over to Daryl in just a moment. However, before I do so, just to say there will be a Q&A session at the end of this webinar, so please do submit any questions you have via the questions panel on your right, and we will get through as many of those questions as possible at the end of the webinar. But without further ado, let me introduce Daryl. Daryl, it's very good to have you on board, and I'm just handing over the presentation to you now, so just one moment.
Thanks, Kris.
And Daryl, over to yourself.
Thank you. So hopefully my screen's come through there. You see that first slide?
Yes, we do.
Excellent. Thanks, Kris. So as Kris said, my name is Daryl Dudey and I'm from IFS. I'm a product evangelist for our mobile workforce management solution. I've been with IFS for nearly 10 years, focusing on field service the whole time. So what am I going to cover in this webinar today? I'm going to start by introducing IFS. Then I'm going to talk briefly about the latest trends in field service and how optimized scheduling is the foundation before considering implementing any of these latest developments. After that, I'm going to share our experience at IFS of implementing optimized scheduling into customers, the lessons learned, and some recommendations. Finally, we have a customer success story before some questions at the end. So IFS's first customer was a power station in Sweden. The founders were 5 friends from Linköping University. They wanted to show their commitment to service by being close to their customer. What better way than pitching a tent? And this is a true story, although I can't guarantee that the tent was actually purple. Still today, IFS core values are of commitment and approachability. We have a flat management structure, and some of those founders are still involved in the business today. From that start, over 30 years ago, our core values enabled us to grow. We have now nearly 80 offices in 60 countries. There are over 2,800 employees responsible for 2,200 customers. Turnover last year was in the region of about £300 million. IFS is growing, profitable, and debt-free. We are a globally recognized leader in developing and delivering business software for enterprise resource planning, ERP, enterprise asset management, EAM, and enterprise service management, ESM. It's an exciting time in field service with many current and upcoming trends. Kris covered a couple, but we've got 3D printing, big data, shared economy, Internet of Things, remote diagnostics, drones, augmented reality, and telematics. However, stop. Before embracing these latest trends, you need to ensure that your business can deliver the efficiency improvements you would expect from these new technologies. Without a solid foundation to build on, these investments will only deliver marginal benefits. Scheduling, demand forecasting, and resource planning are the foundation for all of these service trends. A modern service business simply can't embrace the latest trends without an efficient, connected workforce. Let's take an example. Internet of Things. It's no good a piece of equipment out in the field triggering an urgent request for service if we don't have the means to get the right technician with the right skills, the right equipment there in a timely fashion. The ability to raise follow-up visits directly in the field and have these automatically assigned and scheduled is key. Consider the difficulty of multi-person or sequence jobs, time-consuming. It's difficult to get these scheduled alongside regular service and maintenance. So I put forward that you need an optimized scheduling solution. There are 4 steps from manual through to complete optimization. All companies who schedule a workforce are at some point on this journey here. Many organizations still manually schedule their workforce in a traditional way. This is labor intensive, significantly reduces the potential for efficient scheduling, and more importantly, scheduling in reaction to real-world events. Workforces are typically grouped into small teams with little overall visibility of how smoothly things are running. And the small teams is obviously a side effect of manual scheduling. A person can't deal with too large a team at once. The next step is automated, sometimes with assistant systems to get the nearest suitable job for a resource. Although an improvement over manual, it leads to poor routing, excessive travel, and inadequate compliance with SLAs. The next step for an organization is limited optimization. This is normally an offline static scheduling solution, typically run overnight. This produces a non-changing list of jobs for the day. It might be a pretty perfect plan, however, it easily becomes suboptimal once real-time events occur, such as sickness, new urgent work. It throws that plan totally in the air. The last step is complete optimization. Complete optimization is a system that's continually optimizing. So it's always keeping the optimal schedule based on defined rules and constraints. This sort of system can react quickly to the also typical events out in the field. Vehicle breakdown, no problem. Technician marks on his mobile device that he's no longer available, and the system will automatically reassign his work to other suitable technicians. Now, it's important to note that this journey doesn't always go from start to finish. It can be a very difficult process, typically over a 3 to 6 month period, or it could be longer. At each step, it's a case of turning on some extra automation and ensuring that the team or teams are on board with these changes. Sometimes it's also sensible during this process to actually turn those automation steps back off, retrain, regroup before attempting again. It's important that the whole workforce feels that the changes are positive and not negatively impacting their working lives. That's kind of key to this whole process. So why should scheduling be your foundation? Ultimately, it's about resource efficiency. Your technicians doing more jobs per day. This is as a result of more efficient routing, greater visibility of the workforce, and the benefits that comes with automated dispatch and drip feeding jobs. Drip feeding jobs is something I'll come on to later. In the modern world of text messages with precise time slots for home deliveries and order and collect, your customers will expect shorter lead times for appointments. With optimized scheduling, your backlog is reduced, your capacity managed more effectively, and technicians are spending more time on site and less time driving. A knock-on effect of this is the possibility of offering shorter appointment windows. So rather than the classic morning, afternoon, AM, PM, you can offer hourly windows or 2-hourly windows. So you're offering a greater service to your customers. Most service businesses are both planned and reactive jobs. Typically, the planned work is scheduled in and then reactive work flows around this. With an optimized scheduling solution, these two categories of work can be intelligently combined. So if a reactive job is raised at site, then it will be prudent to consider doing maintenance tasks whilst there. And in fact, some great efficiencies can be had by that process of combining planned and reactive into a single schedule. Finally, I'm sure some of you have had the frustration of waiting at home for a technician to fix your satellite dish or dishwasher and then leave without fixing the problem. Maybe they don't have the parts, maybe they don't have the right skills. It's even more critical when we're talking key assets for a business. Downtime costs money and reputation, after all. Sending the right technician or crew with the right skills and parts to fix the job is essential. In a perfect world, jobs would be assigned to technicians for the day. They would complete their tasks and then head home. This may have worked in the past, but obviously expectations have changed. There are many events that occur during the working day. Technician calling in sick, vehicle stuck in traffic, or vehicle breakdown. New urgent work is raised, or priorities are changed because of a screaming customer, situation you're all familiar with. We need to react to these events while business goals are being met, technician utilization is still maximized, and the maximum possible number of customer commitments are being met. So essentially, you need a scheduling solution that can react and respond. At IFS, when I originally joined IFS, I was part of the implementation team for several years, ensuring our scheduling solutions deliver the expected benefits to our customers. With that experience and feedback from customers after successful implementations, the following process is one that it provably works. First step is modeling. All implementations involve business requirements gathering and understanding business rules, constraints, and priorities. Then we take either historical data or data from live system and run it in a modeling environment with these initial rules. So analysis is performed, and key people, typically dispatchers, members of the service team, are brought in to check the schedule quality and the decisions made. Adjustments to rules and priorities are made, performed, until schedules of expected quality are being returned. So it's an iterative process. We generate a schedule, we take a look at it, ensure it's correct, make any amendments, and continue until when we're happy with that stage. The next one is to choose a pilot team. So this should preferably be a small team with some variety of work. Now, depending on how business critical the customer is, we might advise choosing a team or region with a lower importance. It just depends. So there may be some teething problems with mobile hardware, or the virtually impossible to avoid human issues. So by choosing a team that's slightly less important, there's less pressure for it to deliver results immediately. Once this team is up and running, once this team is running fully optimized and automated, it's time to roll it out to the rest of the business, until at the end of the process, the whole organization is gaining the benefits of optimization. So, based on IFS's experience and my personal experience with implementation and feedback from customers, got some recommendations to make. Possibly the most important recommendation: don't allow dispatchers and pressure from service teams to override the decisions made by the system. Instead, log those question decisions and analyze the schedule and the decisions made properly at end of day. There's always a reason a decision has been made based on the rules in the system. So this process will help refine the rules and build trust in the decisions the solution makes. Soon as we start interacting with the results from the optimized schedule, we're inevitably going to reduce the quality of the solution. Next, talk up the positives, such as you can tell them that your technicians that they're always going to be leaving home on time and they're always going to get home on time. The technicians can concentrate on doing what they are skilled at and not spending their time deciding which jobs to do in which order. They also have the confidence that when they arrive on site, they will have the required parts and skills for the assigned task. I covered it briefly earlier, so drip feeding jobs where possible. So the ultimate solution is to send a single job to a technician at a time. Now, of course, in reality, that might not be possible. So the IFS system, for example, has technology to handle areas of poor signal. So when a technician's entering a poor signal area, it might automatically send additional 1 or 2 or 3 jobs out to him. But this will give you the ultimate in efficiency. Choose a champion or champions. So this is somebody to talk positively about the system and to educate and inform others. So typically somebody from the dispatch team and maybe a field technician, get them on board with the project, and they will help the project succeed by sharing their enthusiasm with their peers, which is very important and very useful indeed. Run modeling. So every implementation should have a UAT, a user acceptance testing environment, which is ideal for modeling purposes. So in this environment, we can try out new business rules, changes in priorities, and it's a safe sandbox environment. See what the outcome is, run some analysis, and when benefits are proven, we can apply that to the live system so that the whole business can benefit. Tell your story. Your customers will benefit from the improvements to your business. Tell them what you're doing and how it benefits them. This can give you a decided competitive advantage over other suppliers, as you're essentially perceived to be cutting edge and interested in improving the service you offer. There may be a potential for offering tighter SLAs at a higher cost, so both you and your customers can benefit. So a customer success story here. Cubic Transportation System is the world's leading turnkey solution provider of automated fare collection and gating systems for public transport. So Cubic provides the infrastructure for London Underground entry-exit system. They manufacture and maintain both the ticketing machines and the gates. They were responsible for installing the highly acclaimed Oyster card system, which is the most widely circulated smart card in Europe. They use both IFS's field service management and mobile workforce management products for call taking, inventory, optimized scheduling, and much more. Cubic has extremely tight SLA agreements with Transport for London. So the priority of a job depends on how busy a particular station is and how many gates are present. So this leads Cubic to have many different priority levels. On top of this, we need to consider travel by both road and train. All this combined is a requirement so complex that their business simply wouldn't function without optimized scheduling. And the IFS solution was a big part in enabling them to win a £700 million Transport for London contract extension. So I've got a quote here from Mike Gosling, Business System Manager for Cubic. He says, "We have recorded savings across all our contracts, which means Cubic has been able to expand the business by taking on several new contracts without having to increase the number of engineers and resource controllers." So a great example there of the benefits of optimized scheduling. This is quite interesting. IFS are currently offering a scheduling health check. So this is an opportunity to measure the efficiency of your field service team and the possible improvements possible with the IFS solution. So you send us some of your data and we'll send you a report back. So it's great to use in business cases for optimization projects. So you're proving the benefit here. Of course, the results you get back are based on the IFS solution, and you are not likely to get the same benefits from competitor solutions. So thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and I'm happy to take some questions now.
Thanks, Daryl. Really interesting presentation there. A few questions that I've got myself, and please, anybody that's got questions for Daryl as well, please do ping them across. We've got a few questions that we've got lined up, but any questions we can get through, we will get through in the time allotted. I think, Daryl, the first question I've got is around the different types of scheduling engines, and you clarified some of the confusion up for us here today in your presentation. However, I still see words like optimized and dynamic being used almost interchangeably. Are these different terms for the same thing, or is it just a case of different vendors are using different terms? Or is there a difference between dynamic and optimized?
There are. It's a good question, actually. So let's deal with optimized first. An optimized schedule is one that has been processed using various algorithms to give a result that meets requirements, such as minimizing traveling or hitting SLA. So an optimized schedule is the one that's been run through the system and out pops the routes for the technicians. A dynamic schedule is one that can react continuously to real-world events, such as new jobs, technician availability, etc. So nearly all, maybe all, solutions will produce an optimized schedule of various qualities, but often this could be a static, fixed solution. So typically generate from an overnight process. So it's still optimized, but it's not dynamic because it won't react to things that occur during the day. So the IFS one, for example, is optimized and dynamic.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I think it's one of those terms that we keep seeing, so it's good to get some kind of definition behind that. How about when a company is selecting the right type of scheduling engine that's right for them? Is it just a case that the larger a company, the more likely it is that they're going to require the best scheduling engine money can buy, or are there other considerations? Things like the nature of the work being carried out, for example, technical, highly complex work versus something that's a bit more routine. Are there any kind of hard, fast rules as to what type of scheduling engine would be right for what kind of company?
I think it depends. There are, if you went to a trade show, you see a bunch of vendors offering scheduling solutions, but a lot of them are for different areas. So the size of the business isn't really that much of an impact. It's more about the complexity. So, for example, haulage is an example. They might have a ton of trucks, but the schedules are essentially static, non-changing schedules to a different set of rules than a field service organization. Field service organization needs something more reactive. It's got to consider skills and parts and availabilities and SLAs and a bunch of other things. So the size of the business, not so much. The complexity, certainly. And that's what at IFS, when we go into a prospect, we're looking for complexity. The more complex the problem, the greater the benefits they're going to get from our solution, for example.
Okay, so it's kind of a case of that's part and parcel of the process when selecting the right tools is to kind of be using their vendor, whether it be IFS or whoever they're speaking to kind of use people like yourself in that kind of process where we're building up an understanding of what's right for our exact company. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right. So when I go in, when we get some interest, we go in and we ask about their business and figure out what it is, what the problem is they're trying to solve, and where we can fit in.
Okay. A question here from our audience. What's a typical time from modeling to pilot to rollout? Is there a generic kind of time frame there?
That's a really good question, and it ultimately decides it several things that affect that. How driven that particular business is, and I guess to an extent how large the organization is. If we're dealing with smaller teams, we can roll out a bit quicker. So we could even be talking weeks from pilot through to live. If it's an organization with a couple of thousand people out in the field, generally speaking, we want to take a little longer over that and make sure that we are not doing it right, but that we are considering all the factors in that. We try to go for a timescale of 6 months from start of project through to live. I mean, that's the goal,
Sure.
if possible. But and like I said, the nature of the business, the more that upper management is driving this project, the more likely it is we're going to get to live quicker. It's very important because inevitably, unlike a lot of the time, these things get done as IT projects, but they're not. They're business projects, and the business needs to understand that there's a lot of change involved in this. We've got people involved in this. We've got customers involved, and everybody really needs to be concentrating on it and focusing on it to get the result that everybody wants.
In your experience, you mentioned you worked in the implementation team when you first started with IFS, and I'm sure you've seen a number of implementations in your time. How those companies that have been driven from the top, and it's been viewed as a business move rather than an IT move, as you describe it. Has there been? Is it a very marked difference between the two? Is it very much that those companies that have the full buy-in from board level get more out of this kind of implementation?
Absolutely, yeah. And the ones that have got that buy-in, have got that drive, they're the ones that see the significant improvements to their business. They're the ones that see big numbers in reduction in travel, increase in jobs per day. They're the ones that see the most success. Because also, we get, as I mentioned earlier about the manual overriding, in a company that decides that they're not going to override the system, they're not diluting the benefits. So they're setting those kind of rules down, and as a result, it works much better for them. And in the end, what I know from experience is those businesses that drive it better is the people out in the field, and the dispatchers end up liking the system more anyway because they get the benefits out of it that they were expecting.
So is it both ends, you'd say, as well as being driven by the need to be driven by the top level? Also, an important case for involving the end users, the guys out in the field throughout the implementation process to make sure you get their buying as well. So it's kind of from both ends of the spectrum. There's a big change management piece, yeah.
Absolutely, and involving the technicians and their team leaders and dispatchers is absolutely key, really, because at the end of the day, this can be seen as a bit of an invasive system coming in and changing working practices, taking responsibilities away from people. So we need to manage it in the right way to keep those people on board. And in the end, people end up doing what they're better at. So if you've got dispatchers, rather than deciding which sequence of jobs to do, in which order, they're doing what they're better at, which is contacting customers and dealing with the technicians and making sure everything's running smoothly. The same with the technicians. They're doing what they're best at, which is being on site, fixing equipment, and interacting with customers, not deciding on a route for the day, etc. So everybody benefits, in my opinion.
Okay. I've got a question here from Martin Green, who's part of our audience. He wants to know what the typical ROI is following implementation.
It can vary. So scheduling as a project is a very definite return on investment project. So most companies can expect to see 5 to 15% increase in productivity and SLA hit rates. So that will improve the bottom line. Every organization's got different priorities, of course, so they tend to tune it in a different way. Fuel savings are a particularly direct way of measuring cost savings. PHS in the UK, for example, made fuel savings of around 7 to 8% a year, which is about £2 million. So it's out there on the internet. If you Google PHS, £2 million an IFS, you'll come up with a link. So they made some significant savings. That was quite a lot more than they paid for the solution, I might add. So the solution paid for itself pretty quickly.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, carry on.
I'll say actually the scheduling health check I covered in one of the slides is a great way of doing that, because that's a good way of putting that business case together. So we can take customer data, if they're unsure, send us the data, we can run that through and give you some predicted numbers, and that helps us to put a solid base into any business case really.
Perhaps now you could go back one slide, so we've got that, so anyone listening can see the. Because I think there's a link there, isn't there, for companies to visit. Talking about the financial gates, how it's obviously going to be one of the big tools that you would use when building a case for going to the board cap in hand and saying, guys, we really need to implement this. I mean, how would you recommend your service director goes to the board if he's, because all too often we hear that service doesn't get the voice it perhaps should in certain industries at board level. How would you recommend going to the board and saying, look, we really need this if we're going to compete?
Well, simple case, as I put forward before, that the numbers make a pretty good case in themselves. So increase in jobs per day, fuel reductions, etc. They're all pretty big numbers. There aren't many projects that you can implement that are going to give you significant savings like that. But there are other sort of more intangible benefits as well, such as customer satisfaction. So a lot of organizations with using manual systems or some kind of assistance systems can end up sending the wrong technician out, maybe he's missing parts, and that just creates frustration at the customers really. So sending the right person, right skills, right parts, arriving within the agreed time window, that is pretty important. And also a possibility with increased efficiency is maybe offering shorter appointment windows. So that's giving a competitive advantage. If your competitors are all offering AM, PM, and you've got the ability to offer 1 hour or 2 hour slots, that's a pretty compelling case, I think, for scheduling and optimization.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially when we're looking at ever increasing pressure to have ever more efficient SLAs, should we say, in the business to business world, and of course, important appointment times in the business consumer world. I mean, this kind of scheduling, it's kind of fundamental, isn't it, to being able to not only meet the SLAs that you're offering your customers, but also make sure those SLAs are perhaps more competitive than any of your peers.
Oh, exactly. And the reality is from my experience in a lot of organizations, they may actually have SLAs in place with their customers, but they're not always necessarily meeting them. And it's quite interesting when we do that first phase, is we take some historical data, is we discover some huge discrepancies from what they think they're doing to what they're actually doing. I mean, I know that those organizations obviously have to do their own kind of bookkeeping, figure out the numbers, but when we put them in, it turns out they could be only hitting 60% of their SLAs or whatever. So they've given a commitment to their customer and then nowhere near achieving it. And the reason being is when you're using a manual system or a semi-manual system, it's pretty hard to consider all the variables. You've got to consider where the technicians are,
Yeah.
what jobs are nearby, what parts and skills are required on those jobs, when you need to get there. It's just too much for a person to deal with in reality. So they just let things slip. So so an organization that takes on an optimized solution, not only are they going to hit the SLAs that they've already guaranteed to their customers, but they
Mm.
have the possibility then of offering shorter SLAs. So everybody else, your peer competitors, are all offering 4-hour SLAs or going with 2-hour SLAs. They won't be able to do it. They won't be able to keep up with that. So
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
yeah.
how big is customer satisfaction? Let's take that thread and continue that kind of thread there. How big an element is improving customer satisfaction in terms of the service delivery improvements? How big a consideration should this be when we're adopting an optimized scheduling engine?
I think it's pretty important actually. It's almost, yes, you can measure customer satisfaction. Of course, there's various methods of doing so, but it's one of those more intangible benefits. And at the end of the day, if you as an organization, if you are not generating a backlog, so you're doing your jobs when you say you're going to do them, you're on your customer site when you say you're going to be there, the technicians have got the right skills for the equipment on site, everything's running smoothly. That kind of reputation is pretty difficult to ignore. Let's be honest. I think it's a huge part of all this, and it's a way as well of selling this whole process to your end customers as well. You know, we're going to become more efficient. We're going to give you better service, etc., etc., and that can only be a good thing.
Would you suggest kind of announcing this to your customer base? Announcing that you're making this investment. Can it be that big a positive kind of spin that you can almost use it as a marketing tool?
I think so. If you do it in the right way, if it's done in the right way, of course, that's important. But if you say you're putting in new solution to drive in benefit, to drive improvements and efficiency, but I think what the customer's more interested in is what is it going to do for them. So if
Yeah.
you can put something forward, something that you couldn't do previously, it was too difficult to do previously, or you weren't handling very well, you could offer if you word it in the right way, of course, then you're offering essentially an extra level of customer service. It's even better if you can do it for nothing. So something that previously you couldn't do and now you can do, well, why wouldn't they be happy about that at the end of the day?
Okay.
Um,
I've got a question here. It's a really good question, actually. Optimized scheduling seems a big step change. What advice do you have on where to start in terms of identifying the process changes that will deliver the fastest ROI?
that is a good question, isn't it? And there's always going to be low-hanging fruit in all these things. I would say that generally, depending on what level of system somebody's coming from, the first thing, the most obvious thing, generally is travel savings, because typically you'd see 10 to 15% savings in travel just by more efficient routing. Um, so that in itself, that tends to be the low-hanging fruit. Then after that, you've got the much greater SLA hit rates and first-time fixed rates, etc. But fuel is just it's a number. Everybody can see that number. They can relate to that number
Mm.
without involving difficult decisions such as headcount reduction and all the rest of it, which is far more contentious. So that's where I would tend to start. I mean, over time, obviously the figures from the business on hitting SLAs and things will obviously confirm it was a good decision going forward anyway.
That leads to quite a good point actually, in terms of the visibility and the reporting element of such a tool. How important is it that at a management level, it's easy to access the kind of the reporting and see how so we can see this kind of step change and see these points. How important is it that these dashboards are in place so we can kind of access that data? Is it something that is key to the success of an implementation, or is it something that is just a nice to have?
Reporting is always important. BI coming out of the system is important to figure out sort of why decisions are being made, etc. But I think actually the visibility aspect is possibly more important or more valuable, certainly from my experience.
Mm-hmm.
So what a company can go from is having very little idea of where people are, what they're doing, where they've been, and where they're going next, to having a very clear idea of where everybody is. We've seen not all organizations want to put vehicle tracking devices in, but we can still get information on last job visited, next job. We can get an idea of where they are in their travel. So complete visibility of the workforce is pretty valuable, to be honest. And as a side benefit of that, you get to see quite clearly which employees maybe need a little more encouragement than other ones. Because you get kind of white space in the schedule, which is where nothing's happening. So people should either be driving on a break or on site in really. And so that visibility tends to be pretty powerful, actually. And that alone, once the technicians out in the field realize that people can see what they're doing, that tends in itself anyway to increase that all-important jobs per day.
Yeah, so it, as well as kind of increasing efficiency and productivity and all these phrases that we hear, that there's an element of being able to bring kind of the management into the trainee management and the viewpoint and the training and understanding of what our engineers are up to without being big brother about it. I suppose that's absolutely key. If there's one bad egg in a bunch of great engineers, then it's great to be able to spot them.
Exactly. And the truth is, though, actually, once the system gets rolled out, is a lot of these, because the human element is a human element and people are people. But actually, from once that system gets rolled out and working, that all goes away anyway, because people understand what the system's doing, what the benefits it's bringing to them. But now that's kind of important as well. So a lot of these are, and once people are all on board and the team all realizes that, then it runs smoothly. We've got tons of examples of customers that are running really, really well now as a result.
Let's stay with people for a minute. I want a question that I noted down during your presentation. I want to come back to utilizing the pilot team. Who you mentioned perhaps a lower key division if possible, so we've got room to tweak, etc. But who should be involved in the pilot team in terms of feeding back what those tweaks should be, in terms of telling you what's gone right, what's gone wrong? I mean, should we be involving everyone across the board in that pilot team? How big should that pilot team be? Surely there's a point where there's too many voices. So how do you select who should be in that pilot team to feed back?
Well, I would say a fairly small team. I'm thinking 4, 5 people maybe. So the perfect pilot team should comprise preferably someone from dispatch and service. So, but these should not be team leaders. So we're not looking for service managers and dispatch, controllers, etc. Mm-hmm. Somebody actually doing these jobs day to day. Somebody at the coalface, as it were. Not too large a team, as you can have too many opinions and difficulty actually making changes. So 4, 5 people. So maybe dispatcher, service guy. You'd have a project lead in there. You'd have a member of management. You may have someone from IT, possibly, depending on the type of project. If only so that but IT can often cross over with business, so that might just be somebody to make changes to the system, so to change the rules, etc. So 4 or 5 people, in my opinion, is pretty perfect. And it's so important that you pick the right people as well. So among a dispatch team, pick somebody who's naturally enthusiastic, somebody who's amenable to change, and somebody who's liked as well among the rest of the team. So that's the perfect candidate, in my opinion. Make them feel expected.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Dal. Just a quick point on that. I mean, when you kind of mentioned your champions as well, am I right in thinking that would essentially be your pilot team? You know, you're looking to kind of pick this pilot team would be the guys that you know when they've kind of given you the feedback and they're happy with how the system's rolling out and you're at rollout and company-wide implementation stage. These are the guys that you want to be kind of wheeling out in front of their peers to kind of talk it up because let's be honest, we can all get a message from upon high, and it may not register, but if we hear it from our co-workers, it might have a bit of resonance. Is that who you meant when you said champions?
That's exactly right. Yeah. So pick the right person and make them, like I say, make them feel a little bit special. I know, give them a varied job title or something else, but make them stand out from the crowd and make them really, they're part of that rollout then to the rest of the organization. So they're the ones who are going to stand up in front of the next team and talk about the benefits of it. So then at the end of the day, these are an engineer, technicians, engineers. They're only they only really want to listen to their peers, don't they? So if there's somebody standing up there as their peer who's been through this process, who's got good things to say about it, they're much more likely to believe him than they are some member of management. That's just the truth of it. So make those people kind of part of that rollout process and keep them on even after that because they're the ones who are going to be suggesting improvements to the business. So they're going to notice where we can change the rules to improve things. So yeah, keep them as the champions, as it were.
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think we've covered most of the questions that we've got available now, and so we're starting to come towards the end of the session. Just to wrap up, have you got any kind of final closing thoughts based on the questions that have come in and anything in the grey matter that's triggered to close the session off? Daryl?
I think really my message is the journey towards optimized scheduling can sometimes be challenging. But by choosing the right team of people, communicating well, and that's very important, open channels of communication, and avoiding the pitfalls I've described, such as the manual changes, etc., will make the whole experience run much more smoothly. So successfully managing those changes will bring considerable benefits to any service organization, and that's just the truth of it. So stick with it. Yeah.
Excellent stuff. So as we kind of found out across the last 45 minutes or so, whilst there are an incredibly wide amount of exciting technologies, IoT, augmented reality, everything else that Daryl mentioned, it's important to focus on some of the key elements that will help us hit those improving first time fix rates, get our engineers to the right job with the right engineer at the right time. These are maxims that I think will remain in field service for many, many, many years, and it's absolutely key to get these fundamental technologies. So, Daryl, thank you ever so much for taking the time to join us today. It's been a pleasure having you on board.
No problem. You're welcome.
And ladies and gentlemen, thank you ever so much for taking time out of what I know are busy schedules for yourselves as well. We hope you found this session as informative as possible. There will be a recording of this webinar available for you to go back and check any of the slides, etc., and that'll be available in the next couple of days. But other than that, bringing this to an end, my name's Kris Oldland. I'm the editor of Field Service News. It's been my pleasure to host this webinar. Thank you ever so much for joining us, and we'll see you again soon. Take care.